Season 4 of Westworld is now officially done. It has been premiering on HBO over the last few weeks, and it's also been concurrently streaming on HBO Max. And so if you haven't got a chance to check it out yet, all 8 episodes are now online. Season 3 ended with somewhat of a divisive note. Some people were very happy with the way things were going and were interested in seeing what the next thing in the story was going to be, while a lot of people kind of checked out because it seemed to really deviate from the original core premise of the series and kind of lose its way when it came to the plot. I kind of agree because I thought season 3 was the weakest, and so while I enjoyed most of it, I did think that it was sort of not being able to keep a rigid enough structure or an interesting enough structure that could warrant a lot more seasons going ahead. But nonetheless, I was interested in the possibilities season 3 opened up towards the ending, that where could this go? Like, you're setting up sort of a finale over here. But season 4 really is a penultimate chapter more than anything else. In a lot of ways, this is really just trying to set up the fact that all of this has to eventually come to an end, while also trying to set up a new beginning, because obviously things have gone south since all of the season 3 fiascos. And so season 4 tries to do some interesting things with its narrative, while also trying to weave in a literal narrative from some of its characters. And I thought this season, for the most part, was fascinating. And I can say for surety's sake that it is a bump up from season 3. If you were someone who was kind of burned by that season, then there is a lot more this one has to offer. Although it won't do you much favors when it comes to trying to keep things streamlined. Like, you're still going to get a story that's kind of twisted and puzzle-like, which I'm okay with, because that's actually something I really liked about Westworld. I didn't like the sort of, streamlined approach, if you will, which was in season 3. I liked having to piece it together as it went along. And this one kind of goes back to the roots for a second. You go back to season 1 a bit in terms of the structuring and in terms of the storytelling, which I think is a good idea. In fact, if you had to sort of create a full circle moment, the best thing to do at this point is to try and take it back to where it started, and then you can start to weave together a conclusion. And that is the season's plan, because it's trying to show you how, since the hosts have got out, things have been slightly more problematic in terms of handling it or trying to control the system. And so there are themes that are put in here of like what we're doing to humans, what the humans did to us. And that's interesting. Like, it's interesting, especially in episode 4, where it kind of reaches like that critical point of really like letting you in on the story. After the finale of season 3, a lot of characters have gone their separate ways, and they're trying to hide from other hosts who are trying to essentially eradicate the issues that have been created, which means that Maeve, played by Thandwe Newton, is in hiding. Caleb, played by Aaron Paul, is in hiding with his family. They're all trying to stay away from all of that, but eventually trouble comes knocking on their door, and they have to do something to essentially stop Charlotte Hale, played by Tessa Thompson, who has taken over the system, but it's not really clear how much she's taken over it just yet. And also a part of Dolores still lives on in her, so exactly how much of that is like influencing every decision. But she's doing it with William, played by Ed Harris once again, who's not exactly William. He's a host version of him, but he's pretty ruthless in his own regard, and he seems to be, spearheading this program on her behalf. They're also using flies to do it, which was interesting. They have this coding within them that is essentially infecting humans and turning them into somewhat of these drone hosts, as you will. Although there are separate things called drone hosts in Westworld, so I don't want to confuse here, but essentially making them mind controlled. I thought all of these concepts were incredibly fascinating, and it led to some really great episodes. This especially, like I said, reaches a critical point in episode 4 when you get to Caleb, who has been trying to stop all of this from happening because he wants to protect his family. And eventually when he gets to Charlotte Hale, it turns out everything that he's been doing so far has been somewhat of a simulation, because he died trying to get to her. And it turns out the fly that got into him at one point in time, that kind of did the trick, and he seems to be going through similar situations again and again in like a simulation. But that's kind of heartbreaking at the same time. It's like so much time has passed since season 3's events that now society has just kind of become this I think all of that is really, really interesting. And the performances that you get out of it are also really great. Aaron Paul is once again terrific. In fact, I would say he's doing some honestly career best work here. He's fantastic in this season, and frankly, I would put him up for award consideration if the option is open for that. He's really, really great here. I really liked Tessa Thompson as well. She's magnificent as always. I don't think I've ever seen a bad performance from her. Ed Harris is menacing as usual as William. I loved seeing Thandua Newton again as Maeve. I think she's a great character. Now, Evan Rachel Wood is also in this season. Now you're thinking, wait, she died in season 3, right? It's like, yeah. But Dolores, part of her still lives on. And there is a part of her in this season, except it's in the form of a character named Christina, who seems to be writing narratives and essentially forming a world around her. We don't get to know more about this until a lot later as to what exactly there is in that perspective, but it's very interesting, and I'll talk more about that later. But she's really great in the season as well. I love seeing Jeffrey Wright again as Bernard. I think he's an awesome character, and he seems to be knowing a lot more about what's going on than anybody else in the entire season, so that's fun. And he's become sort of a prophet at this point, which is great because of the entire season, whenever something's happening, they set up very early on that he knows what's happening. And so you can kind of watch all of it happen and be like, okay, he probably called all this, he's probably seen all this play out, and so we're just gonna have to trust his instincts that whatever is happening right now, it makes logical sense. So okay, you know what the hell, right? Visually, this is a very spectacular season as well. The production value is incredible. Some of the stuff that you get with the city is amazing. You get, basically it's all in the city. I mean, like, there's a couple of moments here and there, which is in this new park that they've created, but it's not as much as you'd think. But like I said, we're going back to season 1 at some point over here. We have to go full circle. And so that moment's coming. But before we get to that moment, the stuff that they have done with this world is great. Westworld stuff is now in New York City, so that's fun. The score by Ramin Djawadi, once again, is terrific. I don't think this man has ever missed when it comes to music, and he continues to not miss. So, you know, there's a win over there, I think, for a lot of people who are music aficionados. The direction and the writing, for the most part, I would say is solid. It does meander a little bit here and there when it comes to the middle of the season. There are some episodes that do feel more exposition heavy than they should, especially considering their placements. Like, there's one point, I think it's episode 6, where you're seeing this sort of thing play out with Caleb, and I thought, this is very interesting, and I'm very excited to see where this goes. But at the same time, we're so close to the end of the season that it feels like we're kind of stalling for time until we get to the really big stuff. But that can sometimes happen for most seasons, like it'll just kind of take a breather for a second, even though you're at a very critical point in the story. That said, it still manages to retain a lot of stuff that it's doing for the most part. Although, like I said, it could sometimes be a little messy. There are points where I think it could have been a little more developed at times when it came to certain things. I think certain things are sort of left in the dust as the season goes on, which was a slight bit like, you know, okay, are we ever going to explore any of that? There are things that they do leave hanging in the air, which I'm sure they'll address in season 5, so that's totally okay with me. Although they've really have set it up like it's going to be the finale, so we'll see how that goes. Let's talk about Christina for a second, though. This is where I'm going to go into some full spoilers, so you have been warned. This also is going to discuss the season finale. She is not real. She's a program. She's essentially creating this world around her, but it's limited. And so the whole premise of season 4 is built around what a mess the whole place has become, in part thanks to Charlotte Hale, in fact almost entirely, and that tower that she's using with the droning sounds to control everybody who has gotten those flies in them. Essentially, now that all of that's done, it's like, where do you go from here? And it's very quickly destabilizing, and it's going to lead to the point of annihilation, which is exactly what happens. Episode 7, all hell breaks loose. William goes rogue, takes over the system, he kills OG William, and the guy is now gone full-blown psycho. And he's created a very messy world. Essentially, he makes what is, I guess the best way to put it is he makes his own version of GTA in Westworld. So that's nice. But that's essentially what you're getting with that point. So what Christina is essentially serving over here is that she has the power to write her own narrative and essentially rectify a lot of wrongs. Now, that could mean one of two things. How much does that, how far does that go? Because you could sort of go back to the sublime and be like, let's tinker a few things, let's fix it all up. But again, how far do you go with that? But I'm interested because it's, again, does seem to set up a full circle moment, because eventually Charlotte Hale does let her take full control. It's like, it's your choice. If you want to do this, we'll do it. Otherwise, this world is forsaken. And it does seem like she wants to go ahead with reshaping the whole narrative again. So we'll see how season 5 turns out. I am very curious to see what goes on over there. In the end, I was very satisfied with season 4 of Westworld. I think it handles some things really well. Some interpersonal relationships, like between Caleb and his daughter Frankie, were really great, especially when Frankie's older as the years have gone by, and so much has happened since then. All the stuff that you get with all the other characters that you've known from previous seasons is also really great. I'm curious to see how they're going to end this. I would be surprised if they had more seasons lined up beyond 5, because I think now you're really kind of pushing it. I think it'd be best to end at 5 because they've set up a very solid grand finale here with what's about to happen, and I think that should do it. But as it stands, this is honestly, it's up there. It's one of the better Westworld seasons. It's better than 3 for sure. Do I like it more than 2 and 1? Jury's still out on that. I'm going to have to mull it over a little bit more. But overall, I am very satisfied with Westworld Season 4. And I'm going to give it a B+. I really liked it. I thought it was really good. And I'm looking forward to hearing more thoughts on it from people as, the days progress. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. And I'll see you guys at the movies.